did you have a hunch about the homosexuality of your child?
This didn't show itself in childhood or in adolescence, but later, in youth. He was studying in St. Petersburg at that time, and when his male friend lived with him there for a long time, I had doubts. He had a lot of girls before that. There were always girls around. Well, at that time, I still used to think that the guy may be just a friend. Why not? It's a normal thing. A friend comes to visit a friend. It's totally all right. There were slight doubts, but I dismissed this idea. I thought everything was completely harmless.
Well, I did notice something. We went to a family holiday center, and our daughter participated in some competitions for children they usually organize. When she came, she brought the prize for the first place, but there was a male name written on it. Even then, these peculiarities began to manifest in her. But we never considered it as something wrong. Oh, and she really didn't like to wear girlish clothes.
I began to notice some manifestations in her. Now, I already understand that it was how her homosexuality showed up. When, as a teenager, she left for Germany to stay there. She often came home, talked about school, about her friends, and I remember that she usually talked about her friends with great enthusiasm, not about her male friends, but about girls. As all of us, I had a close female friend in my childhood, and so I thought that my daughter also had one.
How did you learn about your child's homosexuality?
Once, he suddenly, without warning that he would come from St. Petersburg, showed up in Minsk, absolutely unexpectedly. I was very worried. I thought, my God, what happened? We went for a walk along the river, sat on a bench, and he told me. It was shocking. I was worrying about him, about his future, about his life of such an unusual person. We didn't tell his father. Actually, Andrew wanted to tell him, but I was against the idea, because my husband is a very emotional and impulsive man. I wanted to prepare him myself, because it seemed to me that, as a man, he would perceive it in a completely different way. For a mother, it's easier to accept. Eventually, Andrew insisted and talked to father himself. It was more than 1 year after. Of course, for his dad, it was a shock. When she began to travel more often to Moscow, she was lying to me that she was visiting her friends. I said, "You go to your friends, but you can't visit your own mom." She said she hadn't time. There were a lot of excuses. Then I realized that it wasn't just friends, that she was in love with someone. She didn't allow me to come because apparently it was difficult for her too. And once she said, "I will meet you with a friend." They met me at the station. They brought flowers, they made a salad, we drank tea together. Obviously, we were on edge. Then Ksenia said, "Mom, let's go. We need to talk." This is what I will remember for a lifetime. I got up and said, "Well, let's talk, although I already know what we will talk about." She told me, "I love Alena." I said, "But how? And if it wasn't for Alena?" And she goes, "If it wasn't for Alena, there would be Masha or Sveta or Katya." That was her answer. So she declared her homosexuality. She said that she didn't like boys. Her dad just said, "Daughter, I don't care who you will be with. I only want you to be happy." That's what he said.
We never talked with her about this. We didn't suspect the need for such a conversation, its necessity. It somehow completely, easily and calmly entered our consciousness. Well, she sent 12 guys with whom I had done something. Actually, I'm bisexual. Do you conceal the sexual orientation of your child?
No one knew about this, neither my co-workers nor my parents. I was hiding it. It was a matter of chance. My girls, Alona and Ksenia, at the time, kept a blog on LiveJournal, and they had an ill-wisher. And eventually, this ill-wisher found me, Ksenia's mom, on a social network and sent all the friends on my list a message saying, "That's her daughter. She's a lesbian and lives with a woman." It was a shock. Such a shock that I grabbed the phone and called my daughter in Germany. "Well, say it's Pam." And that's what I said. And now I'm so glad that I got such a coming out. It turned out that somebody just helped me. A weight lifted off my shoulders. And it became so easy for me to leave. I personally didn't tell anyone, and I think neither did my husband, but Andrew wasn't hiding it at all. He shouted about it from the rooftops. Relatives found it out, perhaps somewhere on the internet. His status was written there. So I think that's how they learned it, not from me.
Well, of course, in simple conversations, I do talk about it. At least to show my attitude to this. And if you respect me, my words will be heeded, and my position has never been met aggressively. Most often it's like, why don't they just keep a low profile? Why do they demonstrate? People are simply ignorant in this regard. We and they. But guys, there's only we. What helped you to accept your child's sexual orientation?
Of course, it was difficult. I blamed myself. I thought it all was my fault. My good girls gave me various brochures, sent me some articles. I began to travel to Moscow often, so that everything was fine with them. They worked, they studied, and the happiness of a child is the happiness of their parents. It all wasn't out in the open as it's now. Of course, I had questions to myself. What was I doing wrong? What was my mistake? I was scared. I was very worried about him. I wanted to do something to help. But I didn't know what. I didn't make any attempts to fix him, at least. There were no thoughts that I could talk to him, educate him, or show him the right way. All I can is just stand by. I can't forbid him. He's no longer a little boy who can be taken by the hand and put to another sandbox. We have accepted it and put up with it. And it doesn't matter how we feel about it, whether we like it or not, we'll live with it.
I must know the cause and effect relations, then I can live. Otherwise, I don't understand anything. So I needed to find out the cause and effect relationship, and I was lucky. I began to search if there was any scientific study on this subject. And I came across Dick Swab. He proved, at least to me, that in some parts of the brain of these people, there was an almost imperceptible change, right in those lobes that determine sexual attraction, sexual preferences. I began to think what I can do to educate the Belarusians so they understand. And our goal, my personal one, I consider it necessary, since I understood, is to enlighten people, to ensure that, at least in Belarus, this lack of awareness diminishes.
We have a support group for parents of homosexual children on Facebook. It's a whole community of parents. Its goal is to help us cope with our inner ambitions that almost every parent shares. It can be too hard for some people, but it can become easier if you talk to others. Andrew advised me. When I began to go to this group, it became much easier for me. The parents of various LGBT children gather there And it's a place where we obviously hide nothing from each other. It feels like an escape. At least now, I have some people with whom I can freely discuss this.
What life does your child live?
They had been dating for 2 years, traveled to each other, but what love does? They reunited anyway. Alona said that there was no future here, so they were going to try to live in Germany. They had a wedding. They made 1,000 origami cranes for the wedding and attached them to balloons and released them because their dream came true. And now, yes, now they have a child. 3 years old, my grandson, Yanya. They underwent IVF, and their mutual friend was the donor, who is gay. Now, Yanya has 3 grandmothers, 2 grandfathers. Of course, everything has changed. My ideas and dreams have changed. I can't return to the past. He will no longer be a pianist. He has chosen a different path. Not that I'm proud that he is an LGBT activist, but I'm proud that he has this courage. He's doing it because he wants to help this community live in this country, enjoying full rights and be normal citizens, just like anyone else. Not everyone is capable of this. First of all, he is my child, so I will always support him. I just want him to be healthy, to have a beloved person next to him so that they live happily.
Now Stella lives in San Francisco because she's in her element there, and this is good. She's surrounded by her kind of people. They all know and understand each other. I do not intend to intervene. All this is her personal affair. I'm not going to impose anything. I only expressed regret that I wouldn't have grandchildren. She once announced that I will not give birth because I'm not strong enough to raise and bring them up. That's it. Period. What would you advise parents of LGBT children?
It is difficult to cope with this alone when there is no one to share with, especially at first. Joining a support group can make it easier, I think. If you have suspicions, by no means push your child away. Talk to them, although not everybody would like to do it immediately, but you should try to support them and to love. We do love our children. There's no other way.